Imagine a nation tearing itself apart. The year is 1861. A map, once whole, now shows a jagged line drawn through its heart, separating north from south, brother from brother. This isn't just a political disagreement, it's the prelude to a storm. Then, on a quiet April morning, the first shots ring out. Puffs of white smoke rise over Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, signaling the start of a conflict that will engulf the United States in the fires of civil war. This is the story of America's most defining trial, a struggle for its very soul. What could drive a country to such a brutal, internal war? It was a clash of worlds. In the North, factories hummed with the sounds of industry, a society built on free labor and commerce. The South, however, was an agrarian kingdom, its economy and way of life deeply entangled with the institution of slavery. For decades, tensions had simmered over states' rights, economic policies, and most critically, the moral and political question of human bondage. Every new territory added to the nation became a battleground for these opposing ideologies. Compromises were made, then broken. The Missouri Compromise, the Compromise of 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, each was a temporary fix on a deeply fractured foundation. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, a man whose party stood against the expansion of slavery, was the final spark. Southern states, fearing their way of life was under threat, began to secede, one by one, forming the Confederate States of America. The Union, they argued, was a voluntary pact, one they could leave. Lincoln and the North saw it differently. They viewed secession as an act of rebellion. The nation had reached a point of no return. The smoke over Fort Sumter was not just from cannons. It was the smoke of a burning bridge between two Americas. Suddenly, the fields and towns of America became a vast chessboard of war. Armies sprang up, filled with young men who had never imagined themselves as soldiers. In the North, they wore the iconic blue uniforms of the Union Army, marching under the stars and stripes. Their goal was clear: preserve the Union at all costs. From the farms of New England to the growing cities of the Midwest, volunteers answered the call, driven by patriotism, a sense of adventure, or a firm belief in the cause of unity. On the other side, clad in grey or butternut, were the soldiers of the Confederacy. They fought with a fierce determination, believing they were defending their homes, their rights, and a heritage they saw as sacred. The initial enthusiasm on both sides was palpable. Parades filled the streets as men marched off, promising to be home by Christmas. But the grim reality of war would soon set in. The early battles, like the First Battle of Bull Run, were chaotic, bloody affairs that shattered any illusion of a quick victory. It became terrifyingly clear this would be a long, arduous, and devastating conflict. The faces of these soldiers, captured in haunting early photographs, tell a story of their own. Initial excitement giving way to exhaustion, fear, and the profound sadness of a nation at war with itself. Each soldier, blue or grey, carried the weight of a divided country on his shoulders. In times of immense crisis, history is often shaped by the character and decisions of a few key individuals. The Civil War was no exception. At the helm of the fractured nation stood Abraham Lincoln. A lawyer from Illinois with a humble background, his resolve was ironclad. His primary mission was to save the Union, and his words, full of wisdom and sorrow, would guide the North through its darkest hours. Opposing him on the battlefield was the brilliant military tactician, Robert E. Lee. A Virginian torn between his loyalty to his home state and his service to the United States, Lee ultimately chose Virginia. As commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, his strategic genius would win the Confederacy numerous victories against often larger Union forces, earning him a legendary status. And then there was Ulysses S. Grant. A quiet, unassuming man who had struggled in civilian life, Grant found his true calling in the war. He was not flashy, but he was relentless. He understood the brutal arithmetic of this new kind of warfare. Unlike other generals who faltered, Grant just kept fighting. His tenacity in the Western theater caught Lincoln's attention, and eventually, he would be the man Lincoln trusted to lead the Union armies to final victory. These three men, the statesman, the gentleman general, and the dogged fighter, would become the central figures in this epic American drama, their legacies forever intertwined with the fate of the nation. For 2 long years, the war raged with no clear end in sight. The Confederacy, led by the masterful Robert E. Lee, seemed almost invincible in the Eastern Theater. But in the summer of 1863, Lee decided to take a massive gamble. He marched his army north, into Pennsylvania, hoping to score a decisive victory on Union soil that would shatter Northern morale and end the war. His target was a small crossroads town called Gettysburg. For 3 days in July, The fate of the nation hung in the balance. The fighting was brutal and on an epic scale, from the fields of the first day to the desperate struggles on Little Round Top. It all culminated in Pickett's charge, a catastrophic frontal assault on the Union Center that was repulsed with devastating losses for the Confederates. Lee's army was broken and forced to retreat. The high tide of the Confederacy had crested and begun to recede. At the same time, far to the west, General Grant captured the fortress city of Vicksburg, giving the Union complete control of the Mississippi River and splitting the Confederacy in two. While these military victories turned the tide on the battlefield, another, equally powerful event was changing the very meaning of the war. Earlier that year, Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation. While it didn't free all slaves immediately, it transformed the conflict. It was no longer just a war to preserve the Union. It was now a war to end slavery. It was a moral crusade, a struggle for freedom itself, giving the Union cause a powerful new purpose and ensuring that foreign powers would not dare intervene on the side of the Confederacy. The road from Gettysburg was long and bloody. Grant, now in command of all Union armies, initiated a relentless campaign against Lee in Virginia. Battles like the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, and Cold Harbor were horrific slugfests, with staggering casualties on both sides. Unlike his predecessors, Grant refused to retreat. He famously said, "I propose to fight it out on this line if it takes all summer." He knew the Union had the advantage in men and materials and could afford a war of attrition. While Grant hammered away at Lee, General William Tecumseh Sherman carved a path of destruction through the heart of the South, his march to the sea designed to break the Confederacy's will to fight. The South was crumbling. Its cities were in ruins, its economy was shattered, and its armies were depleted. Finally, in the spring of 1865, the end came. Trapped and with his army exhausted, Lee was forced to surrender to Grant. The two generals met in a small parlor in the village of Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. Grant, showing magnanimity in victory, offered generous terms. Confederate soldiers were allowed to keep their horses and return home. The war was over. The guns fell silent in April 1865, but the echoes of the conflict would resonate for generations. The cost was immense. Over 620,000 soldiers had perished, more than in all other American wars combined. The South was left in ruins, its landscape and economy devastated. But from the ashes of war, a new nation began to emerge. The Union was preserved, no longer a loose confederation of states, but a single, indivisible nation. And most profoundly, 4 million enslaved people were now free, a monumental step towards fulfilling the promise of liberty and justice for all. The path forward, known as Reconstruction, would be fraught with its own challenges, struggles, and setbacks. But the Civil War had settled two fundamental questions that had plagued America since its birth. The nation was perpetual, and it would be a nation free of slavery. The scarred map was slowly pieced back together, not as it was before, but as something new, forged in fire and blood, forever changed by its most terrible and transformative trial. The United States had survived its crucible. Thank you so much for watching this journey through one of history's most pivotal moments. If you found this story as compelling as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.